Hi guys, it's time for another story with Grandma. This one is called Sunny Meadows Woodland School, a school trip. The sun shone brightly over the meadows as Class 1 of Sunny Meadows Woodland School set off for their first trip to the Shadow Woods. Everyone was so excited to be going on the adventure that they had been talking about for weeks. Their teacher, Mrs. Squirrel, had promised a trip to remember, and the whole class skipped excitedly through the meadow. Well, nearly all of the class. Alone at the back of the group waddled Hank. Hank was a hedgehog who found it difficult to make friends. He always felt like the outsider. He's sitting over here all by himself. The others in the class, especially Matilda the mouse, kept away from Hank because she thought he was odd. Yes, Hank was not really looking forward to the day. He's being sad, huh? The journey to the Shadow Woods was longer than expected because Mr. Mole's tunnel train was broken. Indeed, Mr. Mole was there waving them off before he got back to work. It just made Mrs. Squirrel happier, though, as she could talk to the children about all the wonderful flowers that filled Sunny Meadow. There was color everywhere. It looked as if a rainbow had crashed into the field. However, at the edge of the meadow, not everyone was looking at the flowers. There they go on a train, Mr. Mole's train. Going into a tunnel, huh? Soon the Shadow Woods were upon them, and something that looked small from afar suddenly grew very large before them. Each member of the class gave a slow gulp. Matilda Mouse and Rachel Rabbit and Wendy Weasel and Ralph Raccoon. Oh, the biggest gulp came from Hank. He was nervous enough before they got to the woods, and he didn't have a friend to hold on to. Matilda pretended to be brave, however, and she ran ahead, compelling her friends to join her. Oh no! I'm gonna run into the woods. Mrs. Squirrel was not happy about that, and so she shouted for Matilda to come back. Matilda, come back here! And then off she chased after her. Soon the whole class followed, and before she knew it, they were in the middle of the woods. Now instead of bright sunshine, only shadows gathered before them. The whole class stopped, their little mouths open in awe and wonder. Mrs. Squirrel was still chasing Matilda through, though, and did not notice that she had left all the little ones behind. Rachel Rabbit and Wendy Weasel and Ralph Raccoon all held pause as they looked around. 3 very small friends and Hank. The only noise now in the woods was silence. Was scary. Uh-oh. What's here? Do you see something hiding over here? Oh no, what's gonna happen? Suddenly, everyone got a fright, as behind them Matilda Mouse jumped from behind a berry bush and shouted, "Boo!" as loudly as she could. After they all stopped shaking, her friends laughed, all except for Hank. "Oh, silly Hank," said Matilda. "You're just no fun." However, before Hank could reply, another noise made everyone turn around. This time there was no boo of surprise and no laughter afterwards, because there before the class was a very large and a very hungry snake, his magical eyes twinkling with delight as his tongue spiked forward. Lunchtime, said the snake. It was at this point that the class realized that Mrs. Squirrel had not returned from chasing Matilda. The class was alone. Squeaks! frightened and squeezed out of the little animal's mouth. Matilda and her friends all hugged each other, fearing that this was the end. Suddenly, though, Hank was scared no more. He found a way to save the class. He knew just what he had to do. "Quick, everyone, down in this hole!" he shouted as he pointed to the hole under a hanging chestnut tree. The animal stared at him and then jumped down into the hole. Hank followed, only to be stopped by Matilda, who looked very angry. "Hank, we're trapped now, you foolish hog!" But before she could add her insult, Hank jumped up and flipped himself into a ball. Next, he rolled toward the mouth of the hole and blocked it with his pointy, sharp spikes. There would be no lunch for the snake today. They all jumped in that hole, huh? Later, back at school, Mrs. Squirrel was telling the head teacher, Mr. Owl, about what had happened and how the snake had fled Hank's pointy spikes. After the snake had slithered away, the class quickly returned to school, and each one had thanked their new friend Hank. Matilda gave him a big hug, and she apologized for what she had called him before. Hank was now her hero and her new best friend. Hank was still unused to a lot of attention. He turned pink and popped into his ball as his new friends cheered him. Oh, look at him all giving Hank a hug. Hank saved him, didn't he? Whew, that was a scary one. Love you guys.